Baha'i Focus. Baha'i Focus, as you probably know, is a local production of the Carbondale Baha'i community. This is something that we put together here in Carbondale, and it's shown on Carbondale Cablevision twice a week, Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, Sundays at 8 in the morning. Today we have a special guest. His name is Gordon Wagner. He's from Columbia, Illinois.
That's right.
That's right. Thank you for coming on Baha'i Focus.
Glad to be here.
You're a Baha'i, and how long
Been a
have you been a
Baha'i
Baha'i?
for about 23 years.
23 years, so you're one of the oldest. That would go back to early 60s when you first heard about
right.
it. There have been a lot of changes in the Baha'i faith, even in the last 10 years. I'm just wondering, what was the Baha'i faith back like in the 60s?
Oh, I remember back when I became a Baha'i, it was in the state of Kansas, and I was active in the state of Missouri too, and you would pretty well know all the Baha'is in your state at that time because there wasn't that many Baha'is. But now, well, that would be almost an impossible task unless you were a person that was dealing with a membership list or something like that. You might know all the Baha'is in the state.
So it has really,
Been
I would say, grown
lot.
tremendously in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Baha'i faith was first introduced into the United States back in the 1890s, was when it was first mentioned. And the first Baha'i communities did not really exist until about the turn of the century, and they were usually around the major cities like New York and Chicago and some on the West Coast. And Baha'i faith showed a fairly moderate growth for the next few decades, but it really didn't start to really take off until the early 50s, back when the Guardian announced some of his major expansion programs. And so it's interesting that you have been one of the people that have seen it grow and develop. I know I've been a Baha'i for, let's see, 71, so it'll be 15 years. I've seen dramatic changes. There was probably times when you would mention the word Baha'i, and everyone you would mention it to would give you a blank look, like, what is that? And at least for the most part now, a lot of people say, well, I've heard of that, or I've read about that, or I know something about it, or it's getting to the point now where they say, well, my brother's a Baha'i, or something like that. But it's interesting that the changes that we've seen.
There's been great changes, especially the past few years since the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. They've martyred quite a few Baha'is in Iran, and the word has gotten around the whole world, and as a result, even the President of the United States now has tried to intervene or do what he could to stop the persecution. And then also we hear of the Baha'is going before congressional committees talking about this problem. And last year I was at a youth conference in Ohio where we had a Baha'i congressman from Iowa speak to the group.
A Baha'i congressman?
Or a congressman who spoke to the Baha'i group.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't Baha'i.
That kind of surprised me to hear you say that, because Baha'is are neutral politically, and I've never heard of a Baha'i politician. It was something that, I guess relating that to the idea of the Iranian persecutions, one thing that they say is that the Baha'is are not a religion, that they are a political group, and which is a claim that is totally false, since the Baha'is are totally neutral politically. And
that is a claim that they could never support.
Right.
Political activity has never been.
Well, I don't think any of the charges that the Iranian people have used to execute the Baha'is in Iran, there's not one true charge against the Baha'is that has ever been proven in court, at least. Some of the charges that are brought against the Iranian Baha'is are things like warring against God and
spying for Israel and
yeah, some really crazy things. They say that the Iranian Baha'is are spies for Israel, spies for the United States, and spies for Russia. And one of the congressmen, when they were speaking to the congressman in Washington, D.C., said, this must be a remarkable people if they can be spies for Russia, the United States, and Israel. It's just so ludicrous.
Yeah, spying for mutual enemies.
Yeah.
But this doesn't seem to bother them. They'll come up with remarkable things.
Well, I think everybody knows what the foundation of the persecution is. It's just it's religious fanaticism is what it comes down to. This religious group has gotten in power, and they've decided to wipe out the opposition. And the Baha'i faith is their greatest opposition. They're the greatest threat to their security as a religious group, since the Baha'i faith is the second largest religion of Iran. And in fact, it is the only religion that has grown within an Islamic country since Islam began. So they say that they think that it's a very real threat to their way of thinking. Let's talk about you a little bit more. You said that you became a Baha'i 23 years ago. How did you first hear about it? And like you said, there were very few people back then who were Baha'is in Kansas.
I was looking around for different religions. I wasn't satisfied with what I was in, and
what was your background before?
It was what's today the United Church of Christ. It was an evangelical and reformed church at that time.
That's the same church I was raised in.
I see. And it was a fairly liberal church, but I knew there were other religions in the world too that had claims to being exclusive, and I investigated some of them. Look at Hinduism, you look at Buddhism, and you look at Islam. And the basic teachings, you don't see much that's different between the religions, really. Yep, we have all these religions fighting amongst one another. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me, so then the Baha'i idea came along that there was a progressive revelation that God has sent messengers periodically throughout recorded history and to teach us what God wanted us to know at that time. So that idea appealed to me, and I investigated further and became a Baha'i. Really, all these religions, the differences that exist between the major religions is what man has added or taken away or changed. It isn't the essential message of the religion. And if we could all focus on the essential message, there wouldn't be any need for the fighting.
Right.
And then religion could serve its purpose of unifying mankind.
It reminds me of the story of a Jewish rabbi in the Middle Ages who was brought before a king and told to stand on one foot and give the essence of Judaism. And he pretty much said, he stood there on one foot and said, the essence of the law is to love God and to love your fellow man. Everything else is commentary. And that's really the story of religion. The differences between them and their actual teachings are really, there's not much difference between them. One thing I have noticed, though, I've talked to the rabbi in Carbondale, and he accepts the one God and the teachings of God, and that you should love fellow man, but he says that Revelation has, or prophecy is the way he put it, the line of the prophets ended with Malachi. And then you have the Christians who believe that it did not end at Malachi, that Jesus appeared, that he was one more prophet in the line. But most Christians believe that Revelation or prophecy ended with Jesus. Then you have the Islamic people that say that not only did it not stop with Malachi or with Jesus, but Muhammad came after this, but he is the last one. So there seems to be a pattern there that each religious group thinks that their prophet is the last. And the idea of progressive revelation states that not only are these people not the last, but there will be many, many prophets to come in the future. There have been an unbroken chain of prophets in the past, and there will be many, many more to come in the future. So.
Seems like every time a prophet comes, too, he's either he's persecuted in some way, often killed.
Right.
Seldom believed by anyone that knew him.
Right.
Originally, and people just can't seem to focus on the pure message.
Right.
And I hope a day comes when the messages are accepted, you know, by the generality of mankind immediately. It would really change the world if this could happen.
You've got the idea of progressive revelation, where you have prophets coming age after age after age to bring the guidance of God to humanity. How does the founder of the Baha'i faith fit into this scheme? Where does he appear along this line?
Well, he's the last in this line, the latest in this line of
the most recent
of prophets. And the remarkable thing about the Baha'i revelation is that it was prophesied in all these other religions to be a religion, to be a revelation at the time of the end when the world would come together as one.
Mm-hmm.
And this is prophesied in all religions.
Right.
We hear it in Christianity when we hear in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Well, why couldn't this be?
Mm-hmm.
Christ promised it, and certainly it'll come.
It seems unusual that, once again, you get the idea that the Jews were expecting a Messiah, and they're expecting a Jewish king to come from the east to pretty much exalt and to bind together Judaism and establish peace on the earth. You have the situation of the Christians where they believe that Jesus is going to come back, that the Messiah of the Christians will be Christian, that he will exalt the Christians, and either the other people will, I'm not quite sure, depending on which group you talk to, what happens to the people that aren't Christians. The Muslims believe that the Mahdi will come. I was talking with a man one time at the Student Center in Carbondale at SIU about the coming of the Mahdi. He was saying that after Muhammad there would be no more prophets. And I asked him, well, what about the Mahdi, the Messiah of Muhammad? And he said, well, the Mahdi will not be a prophet. He will merely come to basically what he said was exalt the Muslims and destroy everybody else. So it seems to be a common thread binding all the religions together. They believe that their Messiah will come. He will look just like them. He will believe their teachings, that he will come and pat them on the back, say, you other people are wrong. And that's true of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it seems to be something bigger than that. It seems to be something that he is not Jewish, he is not Christian, he is not Muslim. And in fact, in the Old Testament, in Isaiah, a couple places, it says that when he comes, he will have a new name, and he will call his people by a new name. And it says the same thing in the New Testament. Jesus says that when I come, I will have a new name. And Baha'is believe that the new name is Baha'u'llah, that the prophet has come.
And the name Baha'u'llah doesn't appear in the New Testament, but Baha'u'llah really means the glory of God. And we find that all through the New Testament,
right.
The glory of God, or the glory of the Lord.
Right.
This is what Baha'u'llah means.
And especially in the Old Testament, when it talks about the coming of the Messiah, for the most part, he is referred to as the glory of God. It says the glory of God will come to Mount Carmel, the glory of God will come to Acre or Akka. But, these things, it's referred to repeatedly in all the scriptures. Trying to think, in the Zoroastrian religion, he's called Shabaram, which is Baha is a word that means glory. And Shabaram means the king, the glory of God. And of course, in the Christian religion, he's called the glory of God. In the Old Testament, he's called the glory of God. You know, the Islamic writings call him the Mahdi, or the Qaim, the one who will arise. And
in our Christian tradition, it was believed that there would be an end of the world, but the Baha'is believe that that was taken wrong. It should have meant the end of an era.
mm-hmm.
There was a word that was could have been translated either world or era, and they translated it world. Well, really, we have the end of an era right now and the beginning of a new era. And you can see this in science and psychology and just the way people act and believe that we've got something new going. It seems to me that a lot of people don't believe that we can have a kingdom of God on earth or say a golden age of civilization, but I don't see any problem with that really. If we can all go by certain rules that all the teachers taught, all the great prophets taught, we can get along fine and build a great civilization. Should be no problem with it at all.
I think one problem that a lot of people of other religions believe is that somehow the kingdom of God will be established magically, that it will descend from heaven.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. We're at a picnic here today. Today is Race Unity Day picnic. We're here in Sparta, Illinois. We've got a good group of people here.
Chris
Getting
is one
back
of my
to
friends, and he had to leave.
he was just getting ready to come over here and throw a glass of water on us. Our cameraman stopped him.
I got saved that time.
It's talking. People believe that somehow the kingdom of God, or this whatever, is going to come sailing down out of the clouds. For example, the New Testament talks about the descent of the New Jerusalem from heaven, and I don't know how people can literally believe that this is going to happen. But,
that disturbs me too, because if we're waiting for something to happen like that magically, then we're not out working for the changes that need to be made to bring about a kingdom of heaven on earth. And really, God has never, he has always allowed us to use our free will. This is the way he had to make us in order that we could love him freely. So we have to make the changes in order to make a better world. And we can do it too. We can do it. There's new principles that are being accepted. There has to be a oneness of science and religion. They have to agree. We know that. We know that there has to be racial unity. We know that men and women have to have equal opportunities. And we want to see a world economic system evolve, where there's a world currency and standard of weights and measures.
A lot of people, when they hear concepts like
this,
this, a lot of people, when they hear things like world economy, world civilization, world government, they think it's a threat. What are your ideas on this? What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with this. I see this. A lot of people do see this as a threat, and I'm wondering where it comes from. I've never picked this up from the New Testament that it should be a threat. It seems like the natural, well, we go back to the formation of the United States. We had the Confederacy, the Confederate States. We had the colonies, the original colonies. Well, they united, and that
they were originally.
Oh, they were fighting. They didn't have anything together. We saw them all come together and evolve into the United States. No, I didn't see a problem with that. Now, why couldn't we do that at a world level? I can't see where the threat would be. Although I pick up that feeling, that same feeling.
I think the world has seen people like a Hitler arise, or like a Stalin, or certain other people in history that have tried to impose their will upon the world. And I think when you've experienced that much pain, you become a little bit more cautious. But what the Baha'is envision, the Baha'i system does not involve imposing your will on anyone. That it's more of you've accepted it, I've accepted it, millions of other Baha'is in the world have accepted this, and this is something that they are consciously working to establish in the world, and it's not something that is going to be using force. We've evolved beyond the stage where force is a viable alternative anymore.
Baha'u'llah actually outlawed any kind of force in the implementation of any religion at all. He definitely established it as a law that there could not be religious warfare. That should prevent it once and for all. It's very clear in the Baha'i writings. And Baha'is can't even can't force a religion on anyone in any way. It has to be freely accepted. All the prophets have come.
People that hear you make that statement might think, well, of course that's obvious. No one could ever force me to do anything. But if you look at the establishment of the three major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they quite literally were established by the sword and by force. So that is not such a given statement. That in this age, Baha'u'llah has decreed that there will not be force, that you must only use the sword of your tongue.
We're in an age, I guess, where we've seen a lot of changes in the last 20 years, and I think we're going to see a lot before the end of the century. But the Baha'is really believe, and it's prophesied in our writings, that there will be a golden age of civilization, and that there's going to be a political peace near the end of the century agreed upon, and things will get better. And it isn't gloom and doom. It definitely isn't gloom and doom, but we have to work for it.
I think that's something that you hear so often on the media, that the present generation of kids, that a lot of times they feel that there is no future for them. And I think it might be appropriate for the Baha'is to say that not only is there going to be a future, but the potential is for an incredibly glorious future. It just depends which side of values you align yourself with. There's a process of growth going on, and there's a process of deterioration. And if you become part of the process of deterioration, you'll go down with the system. But Baha'is are trying to build an alternative. And it is being implemented on a worldwide scale. There are Baha'is in every country of the world.
That's an important part of my life, to know that the world is going to turn out right. I guess the idea, having hope, is an essential part of being a happy person, I think, and I feel that's part of what makes me happy, is having this hope that things are going to be better, that there will be a great civilization on the planet someday. It's even going to go on for 500,000 years, we know.
Right.
So
the way that I've kind of come to understand it is, first of all, you have the succession of prophets, and these prophets have pretty much appeared for a specific group of people in a specific region. And this has been happening for centuries, and all of a sudden Baha'u'llah comes and everything gets expanded on a world scale. Baha'u'llah says now is the time for world unity. As part of this, the problems that people face all of a sudden are on a world scale also. That this is the great judgment that has been foretold in the holy books, that it's not a judgment that comes from the sky, or it's not a judgment that comes from somewhere outside. It's a judgment that comes from within. That the problems you see with Christians fighting Muslims, that is not a judgment from outside. That is a judgment between their internal policies towards other people. The policies where you see any kind of conflict, what you're finding is that all of a sudden these groups that have been allowed to exist in little tiny groups, isolated from everybody else for centuries, all of a sudden have been put on a world scale, and they discover that they can't deal with that anymore, and that's why they fight. And what the Baha'i faith plans to do is take them beyond their own narrow limitations and take them on a world scale and lift them up to something higher. And this is what a prophet of God has done every time he appears. He always takes the people that he appears to, takes them to a higher level. Frequently they take them kicking and screaming to a higher level, but
that's the way we seem to always do it.
Right.
The environmental problems we see too are this one between Canada and the United States. The United States creates acid rain. It comes down on Canada. Well, these things, you can't do these things to one another anymore. And then we have many of the major industrial nations of the world today polluting the oceans and rivers, and cutting down rainforests, and these things, our environment can't handle it. Our Earth can't handle it, and we're going to have to get together on an international level to work out the problems.
Right.
We cannot do it. One nation trying to rule the world.
One thing, when I was talking to the rabbi recently, he was saying that one solution to the problems between the Jews and the Muslims would be for these two religious groups, and they are both religious groups, to get together and to speak to each other using religious ideas and religious principles. Because if you get beyond the intricacies of each religion or each group and get to the core of the teaching, you find that the principles that they teach are identical. And that's pretty much the way the problems, I think, can be handled on a world scale between all groups. If you use the principles on use the lofty principles that most people in the planet use, you can work out your problems without really worrying about the details of what your particular sect believes or whatever.
Doctrine differences that really aren't that important.
So it is possible, but I think it's very important for people just to begin to communicate with each other and to sit down and talk together. One thing that we've been talking about doing in Carbondale is getting together a panel discussion on this TV show of the various representatives from various religions and talk about different problems that face the different religious groups. So this is something that we're going to try to do on this Baha'i-focused TV show here. So hopefully this TV show can become a tool whereby more communication and more understanding can be generated between people.
There has to be some more understanding between the religions. We look at this situation in Lebanon where we have Christians and Muslims and Jews fighting one another, and then different groups within these groups fighting one another, and this is never going to end over there. It's going to go on and on until we can all see ourselves as brothers and find a way to all get along together. There's really enough science and technology in the world to feed everyone in the world now. If we could just get along, we would be able to feed and take care of everyone in the world.
Right. You can imagine if you would take the combined military budgets of all the nations of the earth and channel that towards cures for various diseases or whatever problems that are facing the nations. And once the nations begin to cooperate, you can see just what incredible benefits that will have for humanity. There will not be an economic problem once the nations start to cooperate. The problems right now are due primarily to national restrictions and national priorities. But this is a process that probably will take a long time.
Sometimes I wonder how civilizations of the future are going to look at us. They're going to look at us as kind of barbaric, I guess.
Well, there used to be a time when
carrying this on.
When man would go out there with a rock tied to the end of a stick and go clonk this dinosaur in the head, and I think that's probably the way that people in 1,000 years will look at us and think, you know, we look back in the Middle Ages where people didn't wash and they had disease and superstition and all these, they call them the Dark Ages, and that's probably what they're going to call our age. They're going to call it the Dark Age. Maybe they call it the Dark Age of the era of transition or something. But,
Dark Ages, that could be it.
I never thought of it being the Dark Ages. Maybe have you ever thought about that, Carbondale? You're living in the Dark Ages, but we're going to come out of it. And we're going to come out of it just as soon as you want it to change. If you want it to change, it can change.
More than anything else, we have to have that feeling and belief in us that it can change, because nothing can really, we can't achieve anything unless we can imagine it first.
Right.
And if we can only imagine an end of the earth in an atomic catastrophe or some other catastrophe, then we can't work toward anything better. It can happen. It can really happen.
Well, there's an old proverb that says the only thing that doesn't change is the law that everything changes. So it's got to happen. We're just about out of time. Got about 1 minute left. We're talking here with Gordon Wagner. I'd like to thank you for coming on Baha'i Focus this week.
I enjoyed talking with you.
It's been great. We'll do it again. Baha'i Focus, as I mentioned, is shown twice a week. It's shown on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, Sundays at 8 in the morning on Carbondale Cablevision Channel 7. If you have any questions about the Baha'i faith, consult your library, call the phone number in the phone book, or we'll figure something out if you want to talk to us. So for Baha'i Focus this week, thanks for talking with us.